All right, good evening, everyone, and thanks for coming on the call. Councilman Gonzalez is on as well. Yeah, so tonight we're going to be talking about issues related to demolition and how it's impacting the neighborhood that Councilman Gonzalez is the councilman for, and appreciate he's on. Just kind of give you a run of show, and I'll be back. I'm going to be participating throughout the call. But initially, I'll run it to John to just give an overview of the way that questions have been pre-submitted, and then the team at the DOT will address those questions. And then if anyone has not had a question that they wanted to have asked that had not been addressed, there'll be an opportunity in two ways. One is to go to the Q&A button and submit your question in writing, or you can hold on and there'll be a process where you can raise your hand and then we'll acknowledge you as well. So that's the way that we'll handle it. This is, I know that there's some media on the call today, but we're going to restrict the conversation directly to the impacted community. And with that, I just wanted to hand it over to the councilman. Thank you for being on the call, and thank you for your advanced work on this, John.
Thank you, Mr. Governor, and thank you all for attending tonight's community meeting. Following last Friday's meeting, I want to give credit where credit is due and express my sincere appreciation to Governor McKee and Director Alviti for being so responsive to our calls and hosting another additional meeting tonight to hear directly from the public. As you may know, the overnight demolition in Fox Point at the direction of the governor has been temporarily paused so that the community can have their questions addressed at this community meeting. And I've heard the concerns and thoughts directly from many of my Fox Point constituents loud and clear. We have submitted those concerns and questions to Rhode to ensure that those questions are answered. I know that this is a tenuous situation for all of us, and I'm grateful for your advocacy, your constructive dialogue, and your engagement. In collaboration with the governor and DOT, our office and I personally knocked at the local level and left flyers for impacted residents, informing them of tonight's meeting. Over 100 residents in the immediate area of the demolition filled out a survey that our office helped facilitate, and folks have pre-submitted their thoughts, questions, and concerns for this evening. So if you stay on the line, there will be an additional opportunity for those who didn't pre-submit questions to ask additional live questions that were not covered. But we have submitted questions in advance. And again, I appreciate the responsiveness of the governor and the director, and we thank you all for taking the time this evening. And with that, I'll turn it over to Director Alviti.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome. Tonight's program will allow for us to address many of the questions, as Councilman Gonzalez said, questions that have been posed to us prior to this, and also have real-time conversation directly with all of you. Once we begin the live question and answer period, I'm going to go through a number of questions that were posed to us during the last couple of weeks. And then after I do that, we'll begin with the governor and myself answering questions real-time live. There are two ways that folks on this meeting can ask their questions. You can either use the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen to submit a question in writing by typing your question in, and those will be monitored by our folks here and posed to me and the governor for an answer to you all. In addition to that, you can use the raise your hand button if you'd like to verbally ask us your question. And on a first in, first out basis, we'll call on folks that are raising their hand to answer your questions during that portion of tonight's meeting. So to begin, let's dig right into some of the questions that folks asked. And kind of, since there are a lot of questions that were submitted, many of them falling into similar categories, I'm going to start off with the most questions that we got were with regard to dust, noise, and vibration in the area of the construction, particularly for folks that live right nearby the construction. So with regard to the environmental controls, as part of this project, the contractor is responsible for implementing certain environmental controls. Those controls range from debris shielding to make sure that no debris is scattered into the neighborhood, filters in drain and inlet protection to prevent pollutants from migrating into the waterways. Contractor will also is required to provide misting and spraying of concrete as it's being demolished to assure that the dust that comes from that activity is contained on site and is not allowed to migrate off the site. In addition, when they're utilizing saw cutting machines, they are equipped with dust mitigation systems. And generally, any dust that falls on the ground that may be tracked off by vehicles, particularly construction vehicles, anti-tracking pads are being laid down for containing that kind of construction debris and dust to the work site. Any drilling equipment that they're using is equipped with HEPA vacuum filters to minimize and prevent concrete dust from coming from the demolition activities, and in order to cut off migration of dust outside of the work area. During the last several weeks, we did get some reports from neighbors that reported dust on the project migrating onto their property. At that time, we implemented additional controls on the contractor by requiring them to add additional dust control measures and additional water cannons to the areas that they are doing their demolition, and they complied with that. And we have since installed a dust monitoring measurement device that will measure dust in the area of the construction to make sure that the air quality is in conformance with the 24-hour average ambient air quality recommended by the EPA and FHWA. In addition to dust mitigation, vibration is being monitored during the demolition with sensors in and around the neighborhood. All vibration levels have been within the industry standard limits for demolition of 0.5 inches per second. We conducted pre-construction inspections on many of the structures around, I think within a 200-foot zone of the construction. And we will also perform those same kind of inspections after construction to make sure that the construction activity did not result in any damage to nearby properties. The noise mitigation is difficult. Knocking down a massive concrete structure takes heavy equipment with high impact in order to break it apart. And the good news is that the worst is over. We have only 3 more nights of jackhammering related noise that you folks in the area have been enduring during the last several weeks. Sunday night, Tuesday night, and Sunday night, Monday night, and Tuesday night, October 20th through the 22nd, are the last 3 nights that the contractor is going to be allowed to do nighttime hammering activities, which is the noisiest of activities and has caused the most amount of complaints and has been bothersome to you folks that live nearby. After those 3 nights, the entire rest of the project will be done during the day. All of that heavy equipment hammering will be done during the day for the rest of the project. And as time goes on, the activities will get further and further away from the houses as they work from the 2 ends inward to the middle of the waterway. We are going to restrict that heavy hammering to take place during the daytime shifts that they'll be working between 6 a.m. in the morning and 9 p.m. at night. So between 9 p.m. at night and 6 a.m. the next morning, there will no longer be any heavy hammering in the area. There will still be construction that will be ongoing, but it'll be the regular kind of construction activity with the traditional kind of noise that comes from lower impact or no impact type construction activities. The work that we did do overnight was done purposely during the night because our traffic engineers worked with the traffic engineers in the city to determine that the gridlock that would be created during the day by blocking those vital roads where that demolition is happening during the daytime would have created a terrible condition for people not only who live in the area, but also emergency vehicles and other commuters that use that road on a daily basis. The good news is we're down to the last 3 nights. And we're sorry that we have to bother you for those 3 nights, but it's necessary in order to get those structures that are over Gano Street down. All of the rest of the construction will be either not over roads or over water, in which case all of those activities can be done during the day without having to worry about the gridlock that would be created from blocking traffic. Per FHWA guidelines, we had a question about relocating anyone living close to the bridge. As I said, we're down to the last 3 days, but relocation for vibration standards, particularly under the limits that are relatively high set by FHWA guidelines, they would not support or participate in relocation costs for those kinds of activities. Other questions came in about accountability. A number of questions came in about the evidence, reparations, about employee actions, and those kinds of questions. Those questions have to do with the litigation. And I know that it's frustrating to hear that as an answer when questioned about these kinds of things, but the governor hired a capable litigation team to sort out questions of liability and accountability for the Washington Bridge. Legal action against those deemed responsible is proceeding through the legal process. As in all pending legal matters, we will not be commenting on these issues tonight, and any inquiries regarding evidentiary or other kinds of legal matters should be directed to the legal team. Questions came in about whether or not temporary bridges built over the Seekonk River or the Army Corps of Engineers have been called in on this project. We have had calls and conferences with the Army Corps of Engineers, but those are within the scope of what the Army Corps of Engineers is responsible for, which is permitting of the navigable waterways. The Army Corps of Engineers takes care of navigable waterways and any obstruction of those by either fallen debris or fallen bridges, and they will become active. However, with regard to the construction of the new bridge or the demolition of this bridge, the Army Corps of Engineers does not have responsibility for, nor do they make it a practice of involving themselves in the either demolition or reconstruction of state-owned bridge unless it in some way is impacting on their navigable waterway. In fact, when the Army Corps of Engineers itself builds or has any of the bridges that they have jurisdiction over, they hire outside consultants to design them and private contractors to build them for them. Very much in the same way that we are conducting this project with consultants and private contractors. We were asked some questions about, with the demolition of the old bridge and the construction of the new bridge, whether or not any consideration is being given to alternative transportation options, like dedicated bus lanes, et cetera, et cetera. And the answer to that is yes. Although we're not yet in the design stage, we will be looking at those alternatives and how they would impact not only future traffic, but also how they would impact the cost and the construction of the new bridge. But they will all be under consideration particularly during the RFP process. And we'll be looking at long-range solutions for those. There were several questions about the footings and the piers, the existing piers, and whether or not those are going to be demolished or whether or not they're going to be reused. The answer is that they are going to be demolished, that during the RFI process, we conferred with 10 of the most knowledgeable and most expert bridge builders in this country, if not the world. And some of the exchange of information that we had with them during our request for information phase that we implemented was whether or not the companies thought it worthwhile to try to preserve those old footings and those old piers. The answer nearly unanimously was that no, it is not. The ability for them to be able to test and determine the viability of those existing footings that are over 60 years old, as to whether or not they would be viable for use in the future, is a risk that most contractors would not involve themselves in. Further conversations with the FHWA and our experts determined that the proper way to move forward with this is to completely demolish the existing piers and footings and to build brand new ones for the brand new bridge superstructure. And that's the path that we are taking. Some questions came in regarding the aesthetics and the design of the new bridge. While that's not a demolition question, I will say that there are historic features on the existing bridge that will be preserved, and they will be preserved once the new bridge is constructed. In terms of its construction, the actual design of it will be brought into focus during the RFP process, the procurement process, with the various firms that are competing. They will be submitting a design to us when they're competing with each other so that we can determine which of those designs are the best ones to implement. There were some questions that came about the weigh-in motion and vibration monitoring systems, what they're going to be used for and whether or not they indicate that there are any problems with the existing bridge. that we're using in the westbound direction, on the eastbound direction and westbound direction. The answer to that is they are being implemented and put in place in order to monitor vibrations and stresses and strains in the structure as a precautionary measure only. In fact, we have had the bridge inspected 3 different times and analyzed by 2 different companies to determine whether or not the existing structure is suitable to use for the duration of the time that we'll be using it as a temporary bypass for traffic during the construction of the new bridge. They all determined that the bridge is in good health. There are no defects that we need to worry about. And this monitoring system is an insurance policy for us and you, the public, that we will be keeping a very close eye on whether or not there are any changes to that, however minute they may be, so that we can address them quickly, effectively, and without the interruption of traffic and/or commuters. So the system is there only to make sure we keep the bridge safe, not because we have detected any defects in it. The question came up is whether or not the concrete being demolished from the Washington Bridge has been tested for asbestos. The construction of the bridge that we're knocking down has a type of concrete that does not contain asbestos. So there is no asbestos on the site, nor is there any present in the concrete that we're demolishing. Question came up as to why, for the demolition, we are rehiring a company that built a substandard performance building in the first bridge. The answer is that no companies have been debarred from doing work for DOT on any new bridge or road construction by any regulatory or legal authority. The only company that has been debarred from RIDOT's construction activities is Barletta Heavy Division, who debarred themselves as part of a voluntary agreement with the Department of Justice. Other than that company, no other companies have been identified. And under FHWA funding guidelines, we cannot discriminate on the basis of arbitrary debarment. In fact, every state in the country, every DOT in the country does business on a regular basis on heavy and highway projects with companies with which they're engaged in claims or who have claims against them. It is common practice in this industry, and we are following the national standard. A question came in, why are we involving a company who dumped toxic soil in a construction project in Rhode Island? And the answer to that is we are not. We are not doing business with any companies who have involved themselves with dumping toxic soil. The names, someone asked what the names of those involved in tonight's presentation. And with me here tonight, I have Pamela Cotter, Chief Planner, Stephen Sutherland, Project Manager, David Walsh from our Neighborhood Relations group within Project Manager, and other top project-related personnel with me. There were questions about how many people signed up for the meeting and why participants weren't allowed to ask questions and why it was held on a Friday night. I think those questions have been answered during various press conferences we have had. However, the governor saw fit to schedule a second meeting tonight with you all to do precisely all of those things prior to the resumption of noisy activities at the site. And that's what we're here to do tonight. Question came in regarding the timeline for the demolition. What is the timeline and whether or not it's been affected by the pause? Well, of course, the pause for several weeks will cause that same delay in the time. So instead of completing the demolition of the superstructure that this contractor that we have a contract with now was scheduled to finish it by the end of this year. That will now extend for those 4 weeks or 5 weeks in beyond the date that they were originally scheduled to complete it. But that's it. It'll just pretty much take as much longer as the delay took itself. And that stands to reason. However, I will say this, our project managers have been in this situation before where there have been delays, whether they be imposed or by natural cause. And they always work with the contractor to try to make up that time and still get the project done. And they're working with the contractor as we speak right now to see if there are ways to align the work between now and January so that we can bring that schedule back a bit. And we'll keep you all posted about that. So the superstructure will take place during that time and be completed by then. The change order that we issued for the additional work to demolish the piers and the substructures will take from February of next year, this coming February, until December of next year. That does not mean that the construction that will be happening as a result of the award of the new bridge contract will be delayed for that period. Because much of the work on the demolition of the piers and the work of a new contractor that we bring on to build the new bridge will overlap. The new contractor will be able to start their work at least 6 months before the demolition is completed, and they'll be able to mobilize their workforce, their equipment, to finalize their designs, to make their permit applications, and secure the environmental permitting, and to possibly begin prefabrication of various components used in the bridge that can be completed in a manufacturing facility. So we don't expect there to be a delay. In fact, because we're now moving that demolition out of the construction phase and into the demolition contract, we expect that the actual demolition that will take place sooner than if it were made part of the construction project. We will continue to post updates, not only of these questions and the project itself, on our webpage at washington-bridge.com, where not only will you all be able to see the progress, but also be able to look at the various questions and answers that came in here or from this night forward, or as a result from this night. All of the questions and all of the answers will be posted there. And there will also be a portal there for you all if you have follow-on questions or folks couldn't attend this meeting or think of questions after this meeting. We're going to leave that portal open there for you to post questions, and our staff will answer them as we receive them. That pretty much concludes at broad strokes, the questions that came in the major categories and the answers for them. And at this point, I'm going to turn it back over to the governor to begin the live session.
Yeah, thanks, Peter, and we've got a lot of work ahead of us here. I'm looking at the entries of questions, and I'm gonna kind of go over one at a time, and Peter, you and your team should be ready to, prepared to answer those, and then we'll continue to go through the questions that have been put on the, on the site, the written, and then we'll go to questions that people have not had their answers, the question answered during this process. We'll go to the, the allow, have people talk to us in terms of their questions, all right? So I'm gonna just take them one at a time here, Peter, and I think that
Sure.
it's great that people are putting questions in here, and I'll just use the first name rather than the first and last name. I appreciate the fact that people are putting the names in here, because good question here on the first one, which you've gone over a little bit, but I think even if you're going over it again, try to summarize the answer, not just say we already answered that question, all right? So Andrew is asking, as a resident directly next to the construction site, what is being done to mediate the harmful dust, and as well as the impact of the jarring, shaking has had on our host structures? And if Andrew's still listening, we'd love to maybe go through the councilman, get his your address. I'd love to go out and visit there with the councilman. But that's the question that we're asking. Andrew's asked that question at 6:04 this evening.
Yes, Governor, the answer to that is the vibration is being monitored. We have a number of sensors, vibration sensors, that we have deployed through the neighborhood to make sure that the vibrations are at or below the regulatory standards. So far, they have been. We also took a survey of the area, of buildings in the area, to determine their condition prior to the beginning of the project, the demolition project. At the end of the project, we will be sending the same inspectors out to take a look at those same buildings to make sure that there is no change in each of the buildings that are nearby that may have been impacted by any vibrations. And in those cases, we'll be taking a building by building inventory of that, and we'll be interacting with the owners of those properties to make sure that either no damage has been done, or if there has been damage, that it's remedied. In terms of the dust, we have implemented a dust measuring system that will alert us and the contractor of any instances where dust is migrated off the work site at levels in excess of the regulatory requirements. So we're monitoring those. We will keep a very close eye. We implemented additional mitigation requirements for the contractor that they have complied with to make sure that the dust doesn't, not only is not harmful if it goes over the project limits, but doesn't get over the project limits in the first place. That's the measure that we're holding the contractor to.
Okay, Peter, and I think Pamela Carter mentioned that she might want to weigh in on this question. I don't know whether that's true or not from your office.
So Governor, I would just say that we got a follow-up question from Andrew that's further down in the chat. He just wanted a little more detail. And he also asked, when do you expect the new bridge to be done and functional?
Okay, the new bridge, the date of the construction of the new bridge is going to be determined along with how much it's going to cost and what it's going to look like. The scope, the schedule for its construction, and the cost are all going to be determined competitively between the companies that are competing for this project, beginning now, or actually yesterday, with the release of the request for qualifications from contractors that are interested in bidding on this, all the way to June when we make the final selection. During that period of time, the companies will be submitting their technical proposals, what materials they're using, what they're going to cost, and how long precisely it's going to take to build it. At the end of that process, we're going to know precisely how much it's gonna cost, how long it's gonna take to build it, and what the bridge is going to look like. And that becomes the contract that the contractor will be responsible for meeting. And we'll keep folks posted during the progress and up until the point where we're able to provide that information as a result of the awarded contract.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. And so I'll just continue, one question at a time, and then you guys can answer it. And then if it's repetitive, then try to consolidate the question down to a shorter time frame. But we'll address each one of these questions one at a time. Right now, we got 26 comments or questions on. The comments I'll read, but if there's not a question to be answered, then we'll just let the comments stand. Has the state been able to quantify or at least estimate the overall economic cost of the bridge closure, including demolition and traffic effects?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that, Governor?
Yeah, I'm not sure that we have these numbers, but the question is, until we actually total it all up, which is, as we speak, and it's good that we got the, on the cost issue, it's good that the federal delegation has assisted us with identifying over almost $220 million of dollars that's going to help us with the cost, which is really something we didn't have back in April. So the question is, by Michael, has the state been able to quantify or at least estimate the overall economic cost of the bridge closure, including demolition and traffic effects?
So the overall economic cost, including impacts on traffic, no, we have not.
No.
The cost that we're most important to us right now is the cost to rebuild the new bridge. And as I said, the actual cost of doing that, we will be working with several contracting companies who will be competing for the project to determine what that actual cost will be in a contract at the award in June.
And Peter, so we do have the cost of the demolition. We don't have the cost. I haven't heard it yet of the, taking the substructure out. But there is monthly reports that your office is providing to me, my office, as well as the General Assembly, correct?
Yes, and we'll post all of that information on our website, again, at washington-bridge.com. We will provide all of the funding information and all of the expense information of the contract and the cost. In fact, we'll be putting the change order cost for the substructure on our website, along with the information on the existing contract cost and any differential between what the original contract cost was as a result of the delay, the temporary delay that we had. We're working on that number right now, and as soon as we get it, we'll post that there also.
Yes, and so the next, it's kind of anonymous because it's kind of more of a handle name here that I don't really know how to pronounce, but who is responsible to ensure that these regulations are followed? I imagine it must be the regulations relative to the, well, I guess in general, I don't, it's not a specific here.
Yep. So DOT.
The monitoring, Peter, I think probably is what's being asked here.
Yep. So the monitoring equipment that's being put in place, the data is provided to DOT for us to review. And we, from time to time, will call DEM when we feel the need that, or if the data indicates that there's an infraction or the company is nearing the limits. We'll bring DEM in to take a look at the site, to take a look at the activity, in order to determine what additional controls we want to put on that. But we're keeping a very close eye on all of that right now. I'm sorry, Governor, I think you're muted.
Thanks, Director. Director, this next question is from William. Will this air and vibration sensor data be posted anywhere publicly during the duration of the work?
Yes. Again, we're using our Washington-bridge.com website as a place that people could go and look at that data along with any other data that we have relative to the site.
Okay, next question, and it's kind of a comment too, but there is a question in here from Justin. Who is responsible for the maintenance of construction zones and routes? Currently, traffic is diverted from the waterfront in East Providence to Valley Street. Again, this goes through this thing, but the question is it too much to expect the route to be paved before the traffic is diverted? I guess that has directly related to the Valley Street. And this is a user. There's so much cement dust on the linear bike path. This is a new one for us, that cyclists, including myself, are losing traction and going over on the approach to the bridge. Who's responsible for maintaining safe access for the bike paths? It looks like that's the central question here.
So the bike path is our responsibility. Ultimately, it's the contractor's responsibility to keep that clear of debris and or any soil or dust that's on it. We will certainly have our project managers have the contractor address that and make sure that they put in place a routine cleaning of it so that it keeps it in a clean state.
Yeah, Director, I think that's important. That's a good follow-up.
Yep.
Take a look at the bike path. We want to make sure that people are using it. If they choose to use it, then they use it safely, right? And if it's not safe, then you got to come up with some other options. So take a look at that. That would be great.
We will, Governor. The good news about that is that the demolition activity is starting in that area. And very soon we'll be moving out of that area. So there'll be no further interruption. You know, we did a lot of work to make sure that the bike path remained open even during the demolition, and we'll continue to do that. But as the demolition activity moves into the river and away from this area, there'll be little or no disruption and or any debris on the bike path itself. But in the meantime, we're on it.
Yeah, next one, anonymous, more of a statement asking whether the Friday's meeting was a mistake to, or wasn't handled well. I'll say it publicly again. Yes, I don't think it was handled well, and that's why we're going to sit here and answer all the questions that are put in, and we appreciate the people who are responding. So, actually participating tonight. All right, and this goes on. This also from Kevin, related to the timing of the meeting. I think that we could have been a little more sensitive to the fact that it was a Jewish holiday, and we apologize for those who were offended. Next question here. Again, I think that you answered this question, Director, but let's go over it anyways. Why didn't you call the Army Corps of Engineers like Baltimore leadership did when the Francis Scott Key Bridge collapsed? Let me give a shot at this one too. I know there's been a lot of comparisons to Baltimore. We've been in direct contact with their procurement and the people who are managing that project. And I have been in contact with the governor as well, Wes Moore. And I think that there's certain details here that are not particularly correct. The way that they're handling it, they're doing the best they can. As we are, they're projecting, a date that's in 2028 to actually complete. I think that they're not ahead of us, and we're comparing notes. So if we're doing something that can be helpful to them, or they're doing something that can be helpful to us, we are in collaboration and contact with one another. But you can answer the question again of why did you call the Army Corps of Engineers, and in what capacity did you call them in on?
Right. I think when you look at the situation in Baltimore, the Army Corps of Engineers were called in primarily because the bridge collapsed into a navigable waterway. That was a major port for which the Corps of Engineers has jurisdiction. So the removal of that debris from the navigable waterway in order to open up that channel back to commerce is the responsibility of the Corps of Engineers. That's why they were called in there. We do not have that similar circumstance here. no debris nor bridge fell into the navigable waterway. So the Corps of Engineers do not get involved in the reconstruction of a new bridge, nor would it be feasible for them to put something like a pontoon bridge or other kind of floating bridge over the Seekonk River, because the several lanes of traffic and the type of traffic that we would have to put over that would not be sustainable on that type of structure. However, the Corps of Engineers pretty much uses the same model and the same contractors and the same companies that we hired to design our bridges. They use them also. So we're pretty much using the same construction methods and delivery systems that the Corps of Engineers uses for their own bridge. In fact, recently, they just conveyed two of their major bridges in Massachusetts, the Sagamore and the Bourne Bridge. They conveyed those from their ownership to the DOT in Massachusetts for the state DOT to handle the reconstruction of. We here are handling it ourselves, and we brought in, Governor, 11 of the most expert bridge building companies in the world to sit with us for several weeks during the RFI process to go over with them and get their ideas on how we should move forward with the reconstruction of this. So we, in fact, did call in some of the world's best and most knowledgeable companies to help us determine how the new bridge should be built.
We're gonna go through a couple more questions that are written. I know there's a couple hands up, and we'll go to the hands. But we still have about 20 comments of questions that we'll go over. But let me take a couple more and see whether we can move ahead. The next one is from Anonymous, which is a personal attack on an individual that I'm not going to get involved in that. This is not the place for that as well, so I'll skip that one. The next question is, why is there no plan to put up a temporary bridge to east or west as communities in other states have? I think that I think the director just answered that pretty strongly, so I'll get to the next question here. This question is from Andrew. This is a good question that I think that I think you're going over the timeline, but it's good to repeat the timeline that you director you believe is to be accurate. When will all the demolition be completed? And then the next question is basically, why is it going to take so long after from now to actually start the new construction? I think both those questions are very appropriate.
Yes, I agree. So that the demolition of the superstructure, as you know, had been delayed for about 4 weeks. While we planned on completing that, what was the completion date on the demolition of
January
superstructure?
29th.
January 29th was our contract to complete that. That will be moved forward now by the amount of time we pause the project, but no more than that, okay? With regard to the substructure and the piers, that work will begin in February, and it will be completed by the end of December of 2025. That's the demolition. The contracting with the new contractor to design and build the new bridge, the timeline for that, again, was developed between now and June, when we're going to be interviewing these companies. They're going to be putting their technical proposals together. We'll be reviewing them. We'll be having discussions with all of them. And then by June, select the company that we are going to hire to build the project. And they'll start work immediately on that. That takes that long. That timeline we developed, again, from the RFI for a project of this scope, in order for the companies to have enough time to properly identify what their design is going to be and give us their best price proposal. If they're rushed into that, they may give us a price proposal that's either erroneous or too high. We're giving them the amount of time that they that they told us during the RFI process would give them sufficient time to fully develop their technical concepts, get designs done, bring on the various experts that they do in order to get us the absolute best proposals that they can by June. And we set that timeline after conferring with those 11 companies who have done business all over the world.
All right, Peter, Director, thank you. Next question, unfortunately, it's Kevin, and I really do apologize for the fact that we answer these legal questions as we're being, instructed. So it has to do with have we stored evidence in terms of the legal case. We're going to have to defer that to our attorneys. Next one is from Ben, and Ben is suggesting we might want to sell some of the samples and use the proceeds for the Rhode Island Community Bank. I'll let that sit, but I think that's hey, if any way that we can help a nonprofit by benefiting from this very difficult thing that all our families are going through, it's worth the thought. Let me I think we have a couple of questions, and then I'll get back to some of these written ones. Maybe we take 2 or 3. If we can do that, send it back to DOT. Are you controlling the questions
Yes, we
right
are.
now? I think there's a couple of hands up. And again, if we could have a question, that would be helpful. And respecting everybody's time that's on the call. We have over 150 people on the call right now. If we can kind of get to the point as quickly and as you can without speeding, going too fast. We want to listen to everything you got to say. So maybe you could call in maybe 2 or 3. I think there's 2 or 3 hands up, and I'll get back to these questions.
Okay.
Thank you, Governor. So the first one up is Mike Lucy. So I clicked allow to talk, and it should be asking.
Mike, you're live. Ask your question.
Hi, guys. Governor and everyone, Director Alviti, thank you. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So apparently the demolition contract has been recently amended to include demolishing the existing bridge piers down to the riverbed. I'm just wondering why. Why not leave those old piers in place, cap them 6 feet above the water line, and then build a new bridge that spans from bank to bank with no new piers in the riverbed? This would avoid all the environmental complications and costs of disturbing the substantial riverbed sediments. It's only about 1,000 feet from bank to bank, an easily spannable distance. Has this been considered? And if not, why not?
All options have been considered. Again, we had 11 of the most expert companies, 10 of them multinational companies in bridge design and construction. They recommended to us the removal of those piers and those footings down to the mud level.
Why is that?
In addition to that, the Seekonk River is a navigable waterway. And we need to remove any obstructions in the path of any vessel.
Well, they're existing. Are they a hazard to navigation right now?
Say it again.
Existing.
Well, then right now they're standing above water, fully visible.
Sure.
And
Cap them 8 feet up and put some lights on them. Save a lot of money. Don't mess with the riverbed. Leave it alone. Has this been considered?
Mike, let me jump in. This is the governor, Dan. So I like what you're talking about. I will follow up and see whether there's any merit to what you're suggesting. But again, I know that.
Thank you, Governor. I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
I'll follow up, Mike. And if you leave a contact for us, if there's a way that you can do that without sharing everybody your phone number.
Absolutely.
We'll get back to you, Mike. So it's thoughtful. We appreciate it, and we'll try to get back to you with an honest assessment of your thought. Okay, Mike?
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Is there another hand up at all?
next hand.
Yep, the next person is Rob Cody. I'm gonna hit allow to talk. You should be able to unmute now, Rob.
Rob, you're live. Ask a question.
Yes, good afternoon. I hope you can hear me. Thank you for the opportunity to ask you a question. And thank you, Governor, for holding this proceeding. So my original question, I think you kind of answered it. I was questioning the fact that under the Rhode Island Rules of Civil Proceeding, both the plaintiff and defendants have the right to obtain evidence for discovery. And I wanted to ask a question about why the broken connecting rod is moved, but no one has had the opportunity to inspect that. So I'll move that question because I think that what you addressed was that, part of litigation and so forth. But I was really curious is why the defendants can't inspect that broken connecting rod. But having said that, maybe you can answer that down the road. But I think I have another question. Is there any construction or repairs that are scheduled in the near future for the eastbound side of the bridge that may impact, traffic, whether it's day or night? Is there anything that's on the plate for any type of repairs?
So Rob, let me answer the first part and then I'll send the second part to the director, okay? So again, that's certainly in the legal area. And I can just tell you that defendants have been, notified if there's anything that they should be notified on in terms of, any detail that the legal team has to notify them on. That's certainly part of the public information that has been talked about. So.
But Governor, with all due respect, in terms of discovery, if you have any component or piece of mechanical device, or whether it's concrete or connecting rods or broken rebar, I would think that in the effort to be able to defend themselves and to bring their case, that they would have to be able to have an opportunity at least to inspect these components. But when this particular component has completely disappeared from the bridge, which is the main reason why this bridge was shut down, it leads people to believe that there's something nefarious that is going on, because if in fact everything was on the up and up, I think that the answer would be from the DOT that, yes, this particular component has been removed for testing. Company XYZ has performed the testing where we're awaiting the results. It was removed by this individual by these methods, and it was removed on this date. And it seems to be a very, very simple question that, a broken piece of hardware, we don't know where it is, when it was removed, when it was taken, and what the results were. And when you look at DOT's own reports of December 8th, and you see the oxide scale in the fracture zone.
Rob, I'm hearing what you're saying. You certainly get into an area that the litigation team would address, and I would hope I think we've known each other for a while, and that I think that I'm not going to get involved in anything that's not on the up and up. So
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. I think that there's a second piece of the question, Rob. About whether there's anything going on the east side of the bridge. Is that what your other question in the future?
Yes, Governor. Thank you. Do we have anything scheduled for any type of repairs or any type of traffic impact or closures or anything on the east side in the near future?
Okay, Rob. We'll have the director answer that. Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
So, Rob, we have had during the last several weeks repairs and maintenance activities happening at nighttime so that we minimize or eliminate any traffic impacts, except for the wee hours of the morning when there's little traffic, and usually it's just lane closures so that what little traffic is going by there can make their way through the work zone without there being any kind of congestion or inconvenience to the public. Those activities have included coming from the eastbound lanes and the westbound lanes of 195 in and around the Signature Bridge, the I-Way Bridge, and bridges that are from that point back to 95. There is bridge joint maintenance that's taking place on those bridges. Those were contracted for long before the Washington Bridge closure was. They're part of routine and occasional contracts that we put out for that work. That work is going to progress in an easterly direction across the bridge during the next several weeks. And there will be several more bridge joints that are either maintained or repaired. Bridge joints are not a structural part of a bridge. We do not expect any closures of the bridge. For that purpose, we may have lane closures overnight in order to allow the crews to repair those bridge joints. And they will be doing that work entirely at night. These are moving parts of the bridge. As you know, you have some knowledge of this kind of construction. Bridge joints are moving parts. They're like the brakes in your car or any other moving part in a machine. They wear out over time. And we have normal, routine, cyclical replacement of those joints on every bridge in the state.
Okay, thanks, Director. Thank you, Rob. Is there another hand up that we could go to? Or else we'll go back to the questions that have been, put in the.
There's another hand, Governor, it's Lonry. I'm gonna hit allow to talk.
Okay,
You don't-
Lonry, you're on.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
I have two questions. The first is about dust. I'm one of the residents who found demolition dust on my property. And I just want to note that the issue before wasn't about the dust control measures. It was that the contractor wasn't following them or was following inconsistently. So I want to know what you all are doing to ensure that they are complying with the dust control measures this time around. And
I'm sorry, Lonnie, and then we'll give you a follow-up on it, but this is the governor. So if you leave your address, I'd love to stop by and take a look. Are you still having the issues with the dust, right now, or are you anticipating when we'll go through those, I think, 3 days of nighttime work? Are you getting dust right now? That'd be the first question.
no dust since demolition stopped, but plenty of dust while it was going on.
Okay, and I'll let the director answer the question about holding the contractor accountable for doing the job, that you're asking them to do. And then if you got a follow-up, happy to, have you ask that, okay?
Okay.
And if you get the address to us somehow, I don't need to do it over the phone here, but I'd love to stop by. I actually was in the neighborhood the other day, walking around, so I could get a good idea of what, physically it looked like before this call.
Okay.
Governor, we'll get Landry's address. In the meantime, what we've done, Landry, in order to clamp down on this dust control, we've required the contractor to install additional equipment. And in fact, 2 times the amount of equipment that would normally control the dust and use it. And our folks that are out there are monitoring to make sure that the contractor is not only using the original equipment, but the additional equipment that we made them install to make sure that the dust, the best solution to this dust problem is containing it at the work site itself. And that's
Director, let me just, we'll try to, I know we've got a lot of people on that, so people are jumping off too, so I'm trying to get moving along, and Landry has a second side. But what I would suggest we do is we have the contractor visit Landry's house, and to see, prior to you doing the overnight demolition, to make certain determinations, to see whether there's other things that can be done to protect Landry and the people that live in this house, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, Landry, you got a second part of it? Thank you.
Yes.
By the way.
Yes, it's about noise. It's honestly somewhat frustrating to hear you all describe the noise as bothersome or a nuisance when I consider it hazardous and dangerous. In our house and in the houses of my neighbors, the noise gets to about 70 to 80 decibels, which over the course of a night is dangerous, particularly for people with health conditions, particularly for kids. I myself my wife just gave birth a couple days ago. We have a little girl who's less, not even a week old. And so I want to know why you all consider this kind of noise safe and why you haven't considered relocating people closest to the demolition site, even if it doesn't meet the FHWA standards that would allow for relocation. It just seems like a thoughtful thing to do if you know that you are causing harm to people in the neighborhood.
Yeah, so Lonnie, one of the things that, first of all, if it's been described as anything other than what you're going through, that's that's certainly, not, not our intent. And that's why I'm in the neighborhood and that's why we're talking to you right now. We're trying to, for the people that are in the immediate neighborhood, this is why I delayed the overnight for a few days, so that those individuals that maybe have other options, they would take advantage of it. And those who don't have options, like if you're saying you don't have an option, we'll get back to you on that, maybe somehow to address that with you, all right? But that's the reason that we delayed I delayed the overnight work, so that we could have this discussion and then provide timeframes where if individuals are being impacted as severely as you're being impacted, have the ability to make arrangements if that was possible.
Okay, and what are the next steps for that? Just so
Well, I'm gonna pay a visit to your property. So you give the address and you give me the contact information and I will do that.
Okay.
Okay. Is there any other thing? Thank you, Ann Landry. Thank you for the call. Is there any other, anybody else got a hand up? Because maybe we'll take two more and then I'll get back to the questions. Like I think I still got another probably 10 to 12 issues to address.
We have 4 more hands right now, Governor. The next person is Bob Marshall. Bob, you can unmute and talk.
Hi, I have 2 questions actually. First one being that if, since we don't seem to be in as much of a rush as we were before, and rather than disturbing people the entire night and really be bothersome, would it make more sense to do shorter periods and spread it over a long period of time so that maybe we did, just 2 or 3 hours earlier in the night and then let them sleep for most of the night, and maybe also do 1 or 2 nights a week instead of 3, 4 nights in a row, and really have people being sleep deprived. And then if you want to answer that, then I can answer you my other question.
Director, let me take a shot at it, Bob, and if I don't answer it well enough, you can jump in. So Bob, do you live in the immediate area, or are you calling on behalf of people who are in the area?
I'm calling on behalf of people who are in the area. I'm not in
Okay.
the area.
Thank you. And so I think that one of the judgments that's being made is the fact that if you did the work during the day, and I inspected the area of the bridge that needs to come down, that's going over give me the address. What's the street? What street does that bridge go over, Director?
Gano Street.
Gano Street. And that you would have to shut down traffic, and that would create some serious backups there. So I mean, we're trying to balance both the logistics.
Yeah, I'm not talking about doing it during the day. I'm talking about instead of going from 9 o'clock at night to 6 o'clock in the morning, going from 9 o'clock at night to 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock and stopping. Let people get some sleep.
Yeah, we'll take a look at that, Bob. We don't want to, the idea of the traffic delays, and then also, what is possible when you actually start and taking down. I don't know if have you physically been to see the section of the bridge that needs to come down?
Okay. Yeah.
Bob, have you physically seen the bridge construction, that goes over Gano that needs to come down? Just
I went through the detour 3 times today, so I'm assuming I drove under it.
Yeah, okay. So, sorry for that. All right, you have a second part. We'll follow up and see whether that's
the second part is related. The second part is related to the detour. How long are we planning on using that? And if we're going to go into the winter with it, shouldn't it be paved so that you can keep it cleared? I know I have a lot of experience with driving and keeping dirt roads clear, and it's not easy to do. So I'm wondering why we wouldn't pave it if we're going to go that long.
Oh, it's going to be done. The demolition in and around Valley Street is going to be completed next week, so we will not be going through the winter with those operations.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Appreciate the call. Let's get back to the Q&A on the people that are writing in here, and then we'll get back to a couple of more questions, and we'll stay on as long as there's questions or or we run out of time here, I guess, but we're not gonna run out of time. So we got from Dana, the question again is, I think you've gone over this, Director, but how will the piers be demolished? I would imagine this is the piers above water. I would think that's what he might be
Well, it's-
asking.
As a matter of fact, that's a good question. Because of the regulatory controls on the way we need to do water demolition or in-water demolition, there are regulatory controls on that. For the reasons that I think a previous caller said, sediments might be kicked up and might change the environment or affect the fish and wildlife. We have been in touch with the regulatory agencies that control that. Fish and Wildlife said that we can go ahead with demolition below the water line in all of the months except for 4 months out of the year. Is that correct? 4 months. During those 4 months, we're to refrain from doing work below the water line. So the contractor will be demolishing the piers down to the water line during the months that we have no restrictions above the water. And then for the part that happens below the water, we will do the work there in the 8 months that fall in the unrestricted period in accordance with the Fish and Wildlife regulations. So all of the work will be able to progress both above water and then down below water at the appropriate times.
Thanks, Director. And then this is a fairly quick question from an anonymous, which put your name in there. I would appreciate that. We just use first names anyways. Is the demolition on budget?
Yes, except for any additional delay cost, Governor, the contractor is still being held to their contract quote or their contract price. The delay cost will come in as a change order. And that is yet to be negotiated because, of course, delaying a contractor from doing their work, there are costs associated with that. We expect to have that worked out in about another week, and we'll be able to make public that amount.
Yeah, we need to make public the
Yes.
the cost and all right, so I appreciate that. And the next question's from Ed. I'll say it again. I think that it was, a mistake to have the meeting on the Friday night. We apologize to those individuals who had to deal with an abrupt meeting like that without, the detail that we're putting on tonight. So it bears repeating, but I won't dwell on it any longer than that. Next, let's see. This is a more technical question from David, but I think it's worth, describing. Please describe the process of drawing up guidelines for the design of the new bridge.
Yep. So
And the follow-up is there. If there is design, it sounds like this person is very interested in what it's going to look like in the end. Will there be public input on terms of what the design looks like?
Yep. So the request for a proposal period and process includes we provide to the contractors in the RFP. The RFP will be issued around the December timeframe when we take a field of many contractors during the qualification phase and select the 2 most qualified to go into the technical proposal stage. At that time, the contractors will be given what we call a base technical concept, which will be a conceptual design of a bridge spanning from one shore to the other. Those contractors will then compete by bringing on their own specialists and their own design consultants to determine how they are going to propose to us to rebuild that bridge, what it's going to look like, what kind of materials are in it. Some preliminary plans of it will be submitted, and details about special construction methods that they might want to use. All of that will come into focus during the period between December of this year and June of next year, during which times we will be reviewing along with our experts and the FHWA that is going to be sitting in on these review meetings with us to determine which design is the best. By June, we will have selected the best design at the best price with the best schedule. And that'll be the contractor that we hire to do the contract.
So, yeah, the next in line, it looks like it's from Renon, and I can answer this too, but Peter, if you want to, Director, if you want to weigh in, that's fine. Will the demolition and rebuild of the bridge cause delay in other DOT projects around the state? I think that the short answer is no. The good news is that, as I said earlier, for the person that's asking this question on the finances, the funds that we secured from the federal mega grant, or like $220 million, has been very helpful. And the funds that we are, have in place to do other projects, including close to $250 million that we secured a few weeks back to do bridges on Route 95, that work should not be impacted. But Peter, if you disagree with that, let me know.
Yes, Governor, just for your information, right now we have about 65 other projects that we're doing, and they are 95% or more on time and on budget. So it's not holding up any of the projects that we're doing in any way.
Okay. Deborah is next. Let's see. I'm not understanding the question, so I'm gonna put that on hold. We have to get back to Deborah. So there was an existing construction project prior. Oh, okay, I get it. This has to do with the contract, Peter. I think I'm going to read a little between the lines here, but Deborah's asking. There was an existing construction project prior to the failure of the bridge, which is true. What happens with that project?
It was terminated.
That $80 million project, right?
That was terminated, Governor.
Terminated. Okay. And then another question from kind of a anonymous here, so it's difficult to kind of, let's see. How are you getting these timelines when there isn't anyone to build the bridge yet? I don't think that we're setting any timelines in terms of the actual building the bridge. We're setting timelines on the demolition. Peter, right? Is that correct?
That's right. The timelines that I've given tonight are contracts that are already in place that the contractor is responsible for meeting. The contract for the construction of a new bridge will contain the required timeline that they will build it under, and that we'll have that in June at the end of the competition, when every company competing will provide us with their best schedule to complete the contract.
Okay, the next question is a little protocol question about the way that the flags are arranged. We'll take a look at that. Invite behind me. Thank you for the shout out there. Let's see what's got next here. Let's see what we got next.
Is there a video of us on there? Yes.
All right, this is a question that Barry had, which would be directed at you, Director, in terms of the condition. I imagine this has to do with the east side. What is being done to address the looming problems with the aging bridge that is currently in use? It appears as the same design of the failed bridge is a logical. So let me give a stab at this, because I actually got out there and looked under the bridge and looked at the bridge that is being demolished, the west side, and the bridge of Barry that is that is carrying the both east and west now. That was the original east side of the building. Those are two different construction formulas, or whatever you want to say, processes. So they're not the same. And as far as I know, there's a great deal of there's decades of life, because that bridge was recently put up in bridge age terms. So, Director, do you want to answer it any different than I just did?
I think you did a great job. Your observation to me when we were under the bridge was geez, this eastbound bridge looks relatively new and much more modern than the bridge we're tearing down, and that in fact is the case. The eastbound bridge is only about 20 years old, or less than 20 years old. And it is of a modern construction, not like the one that we're tearing down. And we had it inspected and a structural assessment done that included an assessment of the additional traffic we're putting on it. And all the companies that reviewed it did their calculations and provided us with their recommendations, said that it is adequate and it will be fine to sustain the additional load for whatever duration we need to build a new bridge.
Thanks, Director. And this is the next question. When do you anticipate guidelines for the design will be decided? Again, I think it's repetitive, but I think it's worth, and actually made public. I would imagine this is the guidelines for the design work. You might want to talk to the RFQ and the RFP strategy.
Yep. So the RFQ between now and December, we've asked these companies that will be competing to submit their qualifications, their personnel, what their experience is, what their experience has been, references, etc. Based on that information, we will select 2 companies, the most highly qualified of all of the companies, to enter into a request for proposal phase. During that phase, at the beginning of that phase, we will publish the contents of the RFP that will contain how these companies are going to be assessed, the scoring system that they're going to be assessed on, how they should submit their alternative technical proposals in the alternative designs that they're going to propose to us, and how they need to define for us what the schedules and the costs are going to be, so that at the end of that process, we will have 2 sets of proposals that give us a cost, a schedule, and a design, from which we'll be able to pick the best one for the state of Rhode Island. And that's the process, and the basis on which those are going to be judged will be published in December as part of the RFP. I think you're muted again, Gov.
I am muted. Thanks. Thank you, Director. All right, so this is a question that has to do with traffic mitigation by using RIPTA as a possible traffic mitigation. I don't know the answer to this, but the question is, you mentioned, this is directed at you, Director, a few months ago, you were coordinating with RIPTA for traffic mitigation during the demolition and reconstruction. What, if any, actions were taken since those conversations? If I recall, those conversations were very early on when you were at 2 lanes on 2 lanes, and we were experimenting with the ferry travel that didn't really work out that well. But I don't know if you want to give a stab at this. Is there any ongoing conversations, or are those conversations pretty much ended?
They have not ended. We're always in discussions with RIPTA as to ways that we can mitigate and improve alternate modes of travel for folks. We have been making strides as RIPTA. I serve as chairman of that board, and we've been making great strides at RIPTA to add additional capability on drivers, additional bus routes, and additional resources that will improve the level of service from the East Bay into Providence and back. And we continue to work on that. And we've got a long way to go, but we're not stopping. We're going to continue to make improvements there, Governor.
All right, thank you, Director. I've got a repeat question here with Andrew. Thank you, Andrew. Where exactly are these vibration sensors placed in the neighborhood next to the construction site? If in fact they are, describe that. This was never communicated to me at any time. I know on my street, Wade Street, we'll have to take a walk on Wade Street. And so where is, and no one ever did a survey in my house before the construction to determine the condition of the structure before the demolition to be able to compare after construction. So question is, where are these sensors being placed? In particular, if you know where Wade Street is.
So I don't have a list of the locations of them, nor do we want to widely publish them because we've already had one or two of them vandalized already. But we will get in touch with this individual. We have their email address, and we will get in touch with them to discuss with them their location and where their location is relative to the nearest sensor, and whether or not they qualified to be within the zone of buildings that were inspected. And we'll determine all of those issues and discuss them with this individual. And we'll be in touch with the individual.
Yeah, thanks, Director. And when we do go out and see Landry, let's take a walk on Wade Street. Well, it sounds like they're pretty close to one another.
Yep.
The next question from Deborah, it appears as though that we're still, talking about the litigation, and I'm going to have to take a pass on any investigation findings that was, during the demolition. I apologize for the frustration that you have there, but I hope that you understand that this is a litigation issue that we're not going to get into detail. And in fact, if they even knew the answer to the questions, the litigation team is taken care of before December 11th, and tonight we're taking care of things that have happened after December 11th when we chose to shut down the bridge and now replace it. So thanks for the question, though. It looks like Chelsea, how will you improve noise mitigation and scheduling in regards to the hydraulic hammering differently this coming week from the from the first time around?
So for the 3 nights that we have left, Governor, it will be similar in nature and sound. We are monitoring the noise levels in the area to make sure that they are at or below the FHWA standards that we're held to. But for those 3 nights, there will be that kind of construction. The only way, Governor, for us to knock down these massive concrete structures is through the use of this kind of equipment. And this is throughout the country. These kinds of similar issues are encountered all the time as DOTs have to demolish old infrastructure and place new ones, particularly in urban areas. And there's just no easy way of doing it. I'm sorry for the disruption. The good news is we only have 3 more nights. The bad news is we have 3 more nights.
I think especially on this, we're saving these comments. If it requires us to go with the councilman to take a look at what the individual's talking about, and let's do that before Sunday night starts, so that if there is something that we can do it, and if there isn't, then we just got to be honest with people. But Bob had a suggestion earlier that I do want to follow up with you, and hopefully we have a couple suggestions from this call that we actually respond to in a way where we're taking some advice where we can. All right. So next question here: has an independent party been designated to be in charge of oversight, and will the public receive periodic reports? I think the answer is yes, and we are providing monthly reports that are public reports on the entire project from DOT to my office, and the General Assembly is receiving those reports as well. So,
and they're published.
Yeah, published. So and where are they published, Director?
On our website. They're on our Washington-Bridge.com website. Has all of the reports on a monthly basis.
Yeah, those are the monthly reports we're providing the General Assembly into my office. So Deborah, I would go to that site, and if you haven't got the answers that you're looking for, then you can reach back out to the director's office. Yes, so this is from Kimberly, and it sounds like Kimberly may have a small business on the site. Her question is, I appreciate that the work will be done during the day for the sake of the, the families that live there in the area. There are many psychotherapists, I hope I'm saying that correctly, psychotherapists in the area that are severely inhibited in the ability to work with our clients when the building is shaking and the noise is very disruptive, especially when we're working with soldiers with PSD clients. You are not able to use these offices, will there be any monies available to compensate these businesses? So one, Kimberly, I think that there is still some grants available. We'll get that information to you for businesses that have been impacted, and as you're describing, it sounds like yours has been. This is a small business issue, so I would love to, if you were willing to have us visit either our commerce office or someone from our office to get a better sense on what you're talking about, that would be helpful. So maybe we can type back to Kimberly those two options. All right, here's a good question for you. I don't know whether there are any guarantees on this, but in bridge construction, but is there, how confident are you that the overnight construction will only be 3 nights?
We're making it that way. We're requiring the contractor to complete that work on between Sunday and Tuesday.
But if you actually extend, reduce the amount of time that right now you need the full, what is that, 6 hours? Well, what's the time frame that the work's going on right now?
It's
9 p.m. to 6 a.m.
It's 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. And
so that's 9 hours. So you're saying that you need 27 hours of work to get the, that's the 3 nights. These are 9-hour shifts.
exactly
Which goes to
right.
Bob's question back a few calls ago on whether you could take the 9 hours and cut it down to 4.5, then you'd be working 6 nights, right?
We've explored that both internally with our experts and with the contractor. The problem with a 4.5, for example, hour time frame, there's an hour on each side of that is mobilization, demobilization of the site. To have it close, the site closed, the equipment and personnel deployed, and then at the end, to break down the equipment and to get it off and clean up the site. That would only leave a very short period of time for them to do their work. And that would require extension of the time from 3 days or 3 nights to a much longer period of time that we would be disrupting the area. Albeit for a short period of time, there are those issues with mobilization and demobilization that have to be considered in a construction project like this.
Okay, next submission here is, which thank you for understanding this is no easy task. Thanks for everybody's work and efforts. Thanks, GR. Will the RFP contain financial penalties for not meeting completion deadlines or incentives for completing prior to the projected deadlines? I think there are some incentives in the demolition, right, Director?
Yep, both
And,
ways. There are incentives and disincentives, so there are penalties if they go over their prescribed or contracted time, and there are rewards if they finish sooner. The same is true with all, for example, hundreds of contracts that we've put out for construction during the last several years. And the same will be true for the new bridge construction. They'll have both rewards and penalties for completing the project before or behind schedule.
Okay. Let's go to the calls again. And then before we go there, just let everybody know that if you have to hop off the call, we're going to stay and answer all the questions that are submitted. If you have to hop off the call, maybe you can just let us know, and then we can make sure that we type, we respond with an answer directly.
Governor, if I may, if people either couldn't make it tonight or they have to hop off this before they get their questions answered, there will be a portal link on the Washington Dash Bridge site where people can go on anytime after this meeting and post their questions or comments, and we'll answer all of them.
All right, go to the phone line.
Looks like we have Tara Granahan next. Should be able to unmute, Tara.
Unmute. Hi, thank you. Regarding the WIM project, if you call it WIM, Wait in Motion, why have we not been told about the surveillance portion, the license reading cameras being installed on the bridge? And if they will not be used to catch violators, why are we paying for them?
The portion of the devices that capture information that we need in order to determine and discern between two vehicles is necessary in order for that data to be meaningful to us. For example, if we detect that an overweight vehicle is on the bridge, sometimes the detection devices will sense that as a single vehicle when actually it's two different vehicles. So a visual capability is necessary to determine whether or not that was in fact an overweight circumstance or whether it was two vehicles in very close proximity that were picked up together. With regard to using that information then to penalize, while that is a capability, we are not enabling that capability, nor are we contracting with the company to do that, to issue citations to people that are not following the law. Keep in mind, these are people that are not following the law, and they're violating the law by having overweight vehicles. We are not enabling or contracting to do automatic violations. That would be against the law. There would need to be state legislation, and we have no intention on moving forward with state legislation to enable us to be able to automatically violate on the basis of what those sensors or that equipment captures.
So while it's in the contract with the 2.8 million contract, while it's in there as an option, you're saying you're not going to check that box.
Right, exactly right. We are not exercising that option to actually create violations. The visual imagery is necessary for us to validate when a vehicle is sensed to be overweight, that it was actually one vehicle or whether or not it was two separate vehicles in close proximity. It's the only way we'll be using that information.
And I have one more question. As the evidence has been collected during the pause, where is it being housed and what agency is in charge of the evidence? Is it you, the DOT, you have it stored somewhere? Is it state police or the AG's office? Who's watching the evidence?
The litigation team is in complete control of anything having to do with evidence or its use or its storage. We are not involved in any of that.
So you have no idea, you don't know where it is?
We have to refer all of those questions, Tara, to them for them to answer.
So you know where it is, but we can't talk about it because of the lawsuit.
No, we don't know where it is, and we can't answer any questions about it because it's being handled in litigation.
So if you don't know where the evidence is, how do we know who's watching over it to make sure nothing's going on weird?
The litigation team and the Attorney General's office is in complete control of the litigation and any evidence.
Okay.
Thanks, Tara. We'll get to the next question, please. The next caller, we're gonna try to get everybody in here.
We have Robert.
Go ahead, Robert.
Robert, you're live.
You have to unmute, Robert.
Just ask you to unmute. Probably have to say yes or okay. We can try.
Let's
again.
go to the next one. We'll go back to Robert.
So that would be Chelsea. You should be able to unmute.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Awesome. I am seconding with the gentleman with the baby was saying. I am within the radius of houses that have been checked and have experienced this extreme noise with the hydraulic hammer. I don't have accommodations for those additional 3 nights of using the hydraulic hammer. Where can I, who can I contact to receive accommodations for that?
Well, Chelsea, I think that it'd be good for me to work, this is Dan McKee again, the governor, so I'll work with John. If you're in that area, he's probably aware where you are. We'll try to, we'll try to make a visit out there and see what your situation is, and then we'll make some decisions based on, visits. So, John, maybe Councilman, I didn't see you back on the call. Thank you very much for, being on after your council meeting. You've been there for quite some time. If we can find out the addresses of these, I think that we can hit those off, fairly quickly this weekend and see what we're seeing. So Chelsea, thank you for the call.
Okay, should I, Governor, should I send that in the chat? Who should I send this information to?
If you are willing to share your address on the chat, if not, I don't know if the councilman has your information or not. I just didn't want to make it public over the phone here. Where you're calling from, but you're right in the immediate area. So I think that why don't we communicate with Chelsea through her email address, and then you can supply that to us, Chelsea, okay?
Governor,
Okay.
Chelsea, I have your contact info.
Oh, thank you, John. Yeah, I've been speaking with you.
And Lon Ray, as well as the other folks on Wade Street. So thank you, Chelsea.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
There's one more.
Another call, please, and then we'll get back to the Q&A.
Yep, there's one more, Gov.
There's one more, David Riley. You should be allowed to talk now.
David, you're live.
Yeah, hi, thank you. I just didn't get an answer to the part of my question about the guidelines for the design and how can the public have input into guidelines for the design before it's sent to the companies.
Yeah, so David, thank you, and I'm sorry we didn't answer your question directly. I read it off as you presented it, but I think the answer was that we will, certainly if you have an interest in that. I don't know how much of the design work, the way it's structured, and again, the director can jump in here, but based on what I understand is we're going through a request for qualifications. That's the RFQ, and that'll turn into a request for proposal with maybe 2 or more contractors. When we get to that point, I think it is a good idea for them to, as they create the design director, to have some level of input. And we also have to kind of consider all the factors in terms of the design. But Peter, do you want to? Is there a way that when we get it down to 2 contractors, that we might be able to not necessarily have a public meeting, because I know that you haven't really arrived at who you're going to award the contract to. That's a question for you in terms of the overall procurement strategy. But I wonder if there is a way that we could accommodate David or others that are really interested in the design and the process.
So, Governor, during the procurement process, we would not be able to have those kinds of public input, because you have companies competing against each other with proprietary information on the design that they're using in order to get a better design than the other companies. So there's a competition, and we're restricted by the procurement laws from revealing any of that proprietary information to the public. However, prior to the issuance of the RFP, we have a base technical concept that our consultants develop that is given to these companies as a base technical concept. And we can make that public. It will be public as part of the RFP issuance. And when that is made public around the December timeframe, we will be able to take comments from the public on, for example, David, if he has some design ideas that he thinks we should explore with the competing companies, we can make those ideas part of competition.
Yeah, so So David, we'll, just, maybe we contact you through email. Now, do you have background in this, or you just kind of have just an interest in the design?
I don't have any professional background, but I have a strong interest in
And you also-
design. And John has my contact information, so we can go from there.
Yeah, well, I'd be interested in hearing what you were, what your
Thank
thoughts
you.
are. And,
Thank you.
so
Thank you.
if you email, we got emails for David, right, Director?
Yes,
Just
Yes.
email David on that, get him in the loop, all right?
We will.
And then at least that, whatever we can do, we at least, following up on his suggestion, all right?
Absolutely.
thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you, David. Any other, anything else, that got a hands up at this point?
Yes, there was one new one, Rosa. You should be able to talk now.
Okay, Rosa, you're on. Thank you for calling.
I asked that. Rosa, can you unmute?
Rosa, I think you're muted. If you could unmute.
Yep. Hi. I really did not have a question. I'm not sure what I touched.
All right, Rosa, then. Thank you.
I'm really happy to hear that the governor took the time and DOT took the time to actually reschedule the meeting so that everyone could have an input and ask their questions and make everyone feel a part of this project. There's been a lot of misinformation and non-information, and I'm happy to hear that it's being communicated now in a more effective manner.
Well, thank you, Rosa, for that. And I think that I do agree that we need to have a lot more interaction with the general public on this, and I intend to have more community meetings in different areas of the state, because different areas of the state are being impacted differently. But tonight we're talking specifically about the demolition, and we know how it is impacting the councilman's district. So thank you for pushing the wrong button. That was a good comment. All right. If there's no other hands up, we'll get to the other pieces of the entry here. And I'm not sure this is an option, but it is creative. Any chance of a light rail path from East Providence to Providence across Crook Point? There's already a derelict path there in place. Justin, I'll kind of answer that question. I'm not sure that that's an option, but we'll follow up on that for you. And then if there is any way to kind of create a better situation, then we'll follow up on that. But we'll be in contact with you. Is there anything being done? Unless Director, you want to talk about the train travel?
The light rail.
Light rail.
So right now, RIPTA is doing a light rail study. Not in that part of the state, but in another part of the state where they think that a light rail system might be deployed effectively and have the ridership. And they're in the process of determining whether or not there's feasibility to that.
Yeah.
I think the knowledge that we gain from that study may be used for other parts of the state, but let's let that happen, and we'll take a look at that data, and we'll be in communications with this individual.
I think it was a specific for that area in East Providence, but I don't. But anyways, follow up, and if there's anything there, let's I think that the situations here, Director, where we can accommodate anybody's thoughts or ideas, we certainly want to do that, and even if they're a little bit, good suggestions that might not be able to be taken advantage of. Is there? This is my question. I could have wrote this for Elaine, because you hear it over and over from me, which has to do with the congestion going east. I think that, is there anything being done to alleviate the congestion going east? There's probably not a lot, because I've been asking for that question, and especially where 95s go north and south as they merge in during the the evening commute and the morning commute. It seems like to have gotten worse over the last 2 weeks. I know that it's probably, you don't have the answer for that, Director, but Elaine, welcome to my world when I'm having these meetings on a weekly basis, talking about that very issue.
We, as you know, Governor, we haven't stopped exploring different new ideas on what we can do to further mitigate the PM peak, in particular, PM peak traffic congestion that happens on the eastbound direction. And we've been through several iterations, some of which looked promising, but ended up after it went through analysis and determination of constructability would not work. But we're not stopping. We're continuing to look at various options that may be available to create more of a bandwidth or more of a throughput of traffic and reduce congestion in the easterly direction. We're going to continue to do that.
Yeah, that's we figured that one out. Like you figured out, you know, how to get 3 lanes going in each direction, which really assisted the troubles that the families are going through to get to work and get their kids to school and get back at night for dinner. That would be something we just can't not continue to discuss in a productive way, Director, right?
Governor, you know, so we got from 0 to 90% correcting it. And that last 10% is always the hardest for engineers to figure out. And
well,
we're going to stay on it, and we're going to figure things out.
Well, for that 10%, there's a lot of aggravation there. So
yes, there is.
Let's keep on. There's a lot of disruption going on in families. So, all right, the next one has to do with a personnel matter. I'm not going to get into a personnel matter on this call. Let's see. The next one is from Chris. What other? Again, I think we've gone over this, but I think we're just going to continue to answer these questions and short as we can, and we've already gone over it. But Chris may not have been on the call when we discussed it. His message was at 6:55, and I think we're sitting at 7:55 now about. So what are the parameters of the air testing? The question is given the timeline of the testing results and corrective action. Also, are you testing for, I don't know what PNOR is, but maybe you do.
The testing parameters for the air sampling, do we have those?
Oh, the dust, right? Yeah. We have that in here.
Hang on, we got it. Oh, there you go.
4 hour.
So the dust monitoring levels that we're sampling and will be monitoring are all in compliance with EPA and FHWA standards. These requirements dictate that the 24-hour average ambient air quality is 150 micrograms per cubic meter. And that's what we're measuring to, and we will monitor that to make sure that they're within the EPA and FHWA standards.
Thanks, Director. So I think this question, I think, again, is one that you can clarify, and I'll try to do it before you do, Director. But why will there only be 2 bidders for the project that will receive the RFP? It doesn't seem to, make sense. But so my understanding in the meetings I've been in is that you're going to go out for RFQ for as many people who want to respond on the RFQ. Yeah. And from that RFQ, you're going to select a couple people that are going to have to expend a great deal of resources. First, you're taking companies that you really want to do work with over, in that competitive process, and then you're going to create a competitive process in the RFP. And actually, we are compensating the company that doesn't get it because there's a great deal of work and cost in putting that design together. You can take a crack at it if you like.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. We are allowing as many companies who want to compete for the first phase, which is the qualification phase, and we'll narrow down the competition. In that first phase, we'll be looking at the personnel the companies have available that have expertise in this kind of bridge building, the experience of the company itself, the qualifications of the personnel they intend on using, what kind of resources the company has, what kind of other bridges like this they've built and what they look like and how they're doing. And from those qualifications, we're gonna pick the two most qualified among the attendants. During the RFI process, the companies that we spoke with, these again were 11 of the most highly qualified companies in the world for bridge building, told us that a considerable expense goes into, for a bridge project like this, their technical proposals. They literally have to take millions of dollars out of their pockets in order to develop a design and all of the scheduling and get all of the technical expertise that they need to work on the proposal. They expend millions of dollars to do that. And companies are hesitant to enter into a competition where they're one among many other companies being asked to expend that amount of money. In fact, there are many other kinds of projects in the region that they can participate in and have a better shot at winning the project. This is a standard practice, having a request for qualification followed by an RFP with a few or fewer or just two companies is standard practice in DOTs across the country. FHWA endorses it. In fact, they recommend this to us. And that's the one that we'll be employing here. With two companies.
So Peter, we're kind of keep on, because the second part of this thing, and I think Richard's question is a good question. I don't think he's questioning whether or not the process is right. He just wanted an explanation for it. The other one which was I think that we're on the record saying we had an RFI and we have an RFQ, and I don't know the answer to this, so I'm not going to try. But will the people who responded to the RFI, that information and or the RFQ be public at any point in time?
Will they what, Governor?
Will we?
Oh,
will we
yes.
publish it? I know when we, I'll just go back to my mayor days, we had a bid of proposals. We listed everybody that was that made a proposal, and the question is, on the RFA, is that going to be public? And at what point will it be? And the RFQ, will that be public?
Governor, we're going to have our folks check with the Department of Administration, particularly their legal and their purchasing, to make sure that we get the right time frame in which that information can be released so that we don't violate any of the purchasing laws. But we'll get that information. We'll post the answer to that question on our website and get it back to this individual.
Yeah, we get it back to the individual, but I think that question has been asked multiple times, at least in my company. We just got to answer it one way or the other. If they're going to be public, and I believe that it sounds as though they should be because they're in a public, process, vetting process. It's just a matter of when they're going to be public. But if they're not going to be public, we have to let people know that under the procurement rules that the state, General Assembly actually creates a lot of the procurement rules that we have to work on. We just got to answer the question: will they be public? And if they are going to be public, when? And if we don't have that answer right now, we have to get back.
No, the answer to the first part is yes, absolutely. The names will be public.
Okay.
I think the question we need to answer with the purchasing department is, at what time is it appropriate and lawful to release those? And
let's
we're able to do that, we will.
Let's do it as soon as we can. All right.
We will.
All right, Deborah, thank you for thanking us, tonight. It's always nice to get a little thumbs up, thank the governor and director for recognizing the importance of having this additional meeting and accepting our questions and comments. Thank you, Deborah. And as I've acknowledged, both here and publicly, I felt as though that we need to do a lot better on this type of communication. And I appreciate everybody's kind of hung in there so long. I think we peaked out at around 190 people on the call. We're down to about 88, as I can see. So those who kind of hanging in there, thank you for doing that. And I expect that we're going to, do based on this call, we're going to do a lot more of this type of interaction. So thank you, Deborah. Again, Ed's got a question on the legal team, why we don't have the legal team on there. If we did, they wouldn't be able to answer any questions anyways, and I think you could understand, Ed, if you hired an attorney, to seek damages from somebody, you know, that you feel as though you seek some damages from, you don't want that attorney out publicly describing his case, to the people that you're trying to recover damages from. So that's, you know, so that's the reason why the legal team is not on the call, right? Next one. I am an immediate resident of demolition, demolition that has been affected by the noise levels of the hydraulic hammer and in need of assistance to find accommodations. That's Chelsea. I think we just took her call, Councilman. Chelsea, that's Chelsea's question, and we're going to follow up with her and just see if there's anything that we can do regarding that issue, right? And Ben, thank you again, saying that he's happy that we're having this call, and I am too. So, all right, a question from Brian, and I think that Brian may have some experience in this area. I'll do Brian and I'll go to the anonymous, the one above it. So I didn't see the anonymous one. All right, how many Gavi bonds were sold to finance the new bridge and at what interest rate and when do they mature? That's a good question. I happen to know a little bit about it. I can give you estimates on it, Brian, and we'll get specifics for you. The total Gavi that was approved by the General Assembly, and the Gavi bonds, for those who are listening in, are dollars that you can borrow in advance of federal dollars coming into the state. And so that was approved by the General Assembly. That was part of our finance package that we're very pleased that we're making progress on, especially with the federal over $220 million, which is not a small amount of money to help our taxpayers, a significant amount. The Gavi bonds were an amount of, I think, with 348 million. I believe that we borrowed the first batch, and that goes through our, not to get too in the weeds, but that's something, that a process that we run through our Commerce Department, and that was in the vicinity, I'm going to say, of around 140 million, give or take a few million. I don't have those numbers in front of me.
Correct.
I think the interest rate was favorable. It was in the 3% range, maybe a little slightly higher than 3%. And when do they mature? I don't know whether these are 20-year or 30 years, but we'll find out. But it was favorable, Brian. I think you'd be happy to know it was favorable conditions, and we didn't borrow the whole thing, anticipating that the interest rates may be coming down. And right now we didn't need those dollars, so we're not borrowing dollars that we don't need and paying debt service that we don't need.
Governor, there's one important point to that too.
Yeah.
These grants that we're getting, for example, the $95 million grant that we got yesterday, means that that's $95 million less of that bond that we have to use. And we're going to continue to pursue additional grants through this entire project. And the more grants that we get, the more we're going to displace those dollars that we would have to borrow out of that. And our goal is to, of course, keep doing it until we mitigate entirely the need to use the Gavi. If we need to use it, it's there as a backstop.
Yeah, when there's still a mystery in terms of the total number at the end, but there's not a mystery to the fact that a congressional delegation, we've had direct conversations with the Secretary Buttigieg, Secretary of Commerce, Gina Raimondo, has actually helped weigh in. We've had direct conversations with the President of the United States, President Biden, and his staff, and I visited there just a month ago. So all that is paying off in that area, and we'll continue to seek out any outside funding that we can to help with the cost of the project. So thank you for that question. So I think we already answered this one. Does Rhode Island oversee or choose the construction companies that work on the bridge? Through the procurement process, we go out for bid, competitive bids, and then there's a scoring system that determines who gets the work, and then I'm told who gets the work. That's how it works out. But go ahead, Director, if you want to weigh in a little bit on that, then.
No, I
that's
think, I
fine.
think you hit it on the head. We're not allowed by federal regulation, we're not allowed to restrict the competitors who compete for these projects. We're not allowed to limit them in any way unless there are sanctions against them by a regulatory or legal authority. And we don't have any companies like that in the batch. So the competition is open. It's a level playing field for everyone, and we welcome all bidders.
Oh, we got Andrew back. He knows where Wade Street is, and he would like us to visit Wade Street with maybe some of the people that are there before we start the work on Sunday night, Councilman. We may have a little work to do before the weekend's over. So thank you, Andrew. Thank you for your comment, and we will try to arrange that through an email or through the councilman who is. Again, thank you, Councilman, for being right on top of a lot of these questions that are coming in. Some of them are actually coming in. Most of them now have come in since we started the call. All right, 1 second. Yeah, David, I think we took your phone call on this one. We're going to get back to you in terms of the strategy and the design of the building, the design of the bridge. Yeah, this is back again on the issue. I think you've answered it. I think we're going to continue to have hearing about the backup on 95 North and South, Director, and the lane merges on the 195 East. I travel this way daily, and it seems as there should be lane restrictions once you merge onto 195 East to keep the traffic moving. We'll take that all into consideration, and then there's a more observations here, but I think it's to the point of, is there anything we can do on 95 North and 95 South that can help with the backup as it rolls into 195? And you've answered that question, Director, that we're going to continue to be exploring options on that basis, right? But right now we don't have any answer that could say that it would work, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
I know you, as much as anyone else, want them. You remind me of that daily.
Yeah, I know, but very politely.
Yes.
Very polite.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
You see my buddy David Walsh smiling there.
Yeah.
I'm very polite, but very persistent. All right, next question here, again, it gets into whether or not there's House and Senate oversight. Yes, so there is. I'm in direct conversations with the Speaker and the Senate President on a regular basis on this issue. They also have required, which we are complying with willingly, monthly reports to both the House and the Senate, and the oversight committees receive those reports, and so we'll continue to keep them informed. And then if the House or the Senate would like us to come in person when the session begins, we'll continue to keep them updated. So I just want to let Anonymous know that those conversations are going on a regular basis.
It might be worth noting here that in addition to all of that, the reports and everything else, we meet on a weekly basis or bi-weekly basis with East Bay legislators and the mayors and their offices of each of the two cities, and to make sure that we're keeping them fully abreast and accountable to them for the work that we're doing.
Oh, okay, got it, okay. I gotta get that. All right, thanks, Director. This is on Robinson, and we're doing pretty good because we're under 10 now, and we're gonna continue to go right to the end. Councilman, you're gonna be able to hold on with us to hear these, what's going on. Thank you for joining. So again, it's a recognition that this is working well for some people, thanking us for hosting this, and that it's long overdue, and we're going to continue doing this in either in person or virtually. But virtually allows us to get a lot more people in and get their answers to their questions. So this is a good question as well, because there's concern, right? That the contractor who originally erected the failed bridge, which was back in what, 68 or something like that, in the 60s, Have they done other work? Are we going over bridges that this, the same design has been used in other areas of the state? Director, I believe the short answer is no, but if you want to just weigh in, would like to know, has their work in Rhode Island been reviewed? If in fact there's other work that's a similar design by the similar contractor back in was it not, what was the date that that bridge was built? 60, I think it was 68. Huh?
68, yeah.
68, yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah, Governor, this is not only a unique bridge in Rhode Island, unique design, but our experts have told us that this is a most unique design even in the country. So in Rhode Island, no, we do not have any other bridges that are constructed in the same way that this was.
Okay, thanks. Anonymous still wants me to talk about a personnel matter. I'm not going to do that in any shape that you asked the question. On to the next thing that relates to the demolition. Can property owners near the bridge, let's see, can property owners near the bridge access the pre-demolition survey of their property right now? I don't think there has been any. This is Lonray again. Lonray, we're gonna visit you and talk through these issues. So thank you for the question. As far as I know, there wasn't any pre-inspection of the properties to determine the before and after impact. Director,
Yes, that's correct.
okay, so we'll get out now and
we can provide that information to the homeowners. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's see what we got here. Yeah, here's a good, this is another question related to the businesses. Have you worked with major businesses in Rhode Island to encourage work from home options for employees affected by the bridge construction? I believe that they have, those who can have accommodated, especially during the first 90+ days before we went to 3 lanes. And we have ongoing conversations with the businesses, the hospitals, and whether it's Fidelity or CVS, and they're managing it, and I think they are accommodating that their workers. But if Anonymous knows a company that is not doing it and they'd like us to talk to that company, be happy to follow up if you type it in, deliver that information to us by email. James, let me see. Have you had any follow-up with the Secretary of Transportation since his visit? And James, the answer is yes, through multiple sources. I've had more than one discussion with Secretary Buttigieg on the grants and leading up to the grants. Certainly our congressional delegation has talked to the Secretary, along with Secretary Raimondo, which is public, along with the White House. So we have ongoing conversations with Secretary of Transportation, and we're going to continue to have that. And while we're talking about that as well, we have a continuous conversation. And Peter, you might want to just give a 20-second, your conversations with the Federal Highway Administration related to this project and the roles that they play, and the fact that as we go through work and we actually put things in progress, that they are fully apprised of the situation, and they have support that, right, Peter? Right, Director?
Absolutely, Governor. We've gotten tremendous support from the Federal Highway Administration and their administrator. Their administrator and his staff are actually present at many of the meetings that we have with our project management staff here at DOT. They participate in the meetings, for example, in the RFI process, so that they can hear firsthand some of the feedback we were getting. They also participate during the review process of the RFPs. Their additional national kind of expertise that they bring to the table is very helpful to us in being able to get us information, for example, not only from their headquarters, but also from other DOTs. During the last several months, we've had several peer exchanges through them with other DOTs that have experienced similar situations, to be able to get information from them on how they did their work, or how they do their work and how we do ours, and exchange that information. So FHWA has not only been very helpful there, but they have been a tremendous ally in advocating for us with the Secretary of Transportation to bring that additional funding through grants to Rhode Island. And just in the last 6 months, you know this, Governor, just in the last 6 months, we've gotten nearly $600 million between this project and other projects in competitive grants where we're competing with other states. And our FHWA administrator has been very strenuous and ardent supporter of our program here. And they endorse everything that we're doing.
Yeah, thanks, Director. And we're hopeful that we're going to continue that relationship, and they have confidence in the work that we're doing. Cameron has a question, which I think is a good one, but it's a future one, but I think we need to put it on the drawing board. He's basically asking, given that we know that MBTA has no LPA of the 6 proposals that include connecting Fall River directly with Providence by rail, and no existing tracks, why will there be a discussion on bus rapid transit with a dedicated right of way for the new bridge? So I don't know whether that's, I don't know the answer to that. I mean, we'll open up the discussion to see whether it makes sense during the design and evaluate that, but that's a suggestion.
Yep, and we'll certainly make that part of our design and review process.
Yeah, so Michael has another question on trying to get us to talk about the legal process. And again, I feel your frustration. In some ways, I have the same frustration relative when I get in front of the different media sources. And I have to tell you that, again, the legal team, you're not going to, again, Michael, if you have a legal case that you're suing somebody for recovery, you don't want that legal team out talking about anything that has to do with your legal case, because first of all, they would be up for some level of reprimand from a legal point of view. And so I'll just continue to just say that, the people who are asking for this legal information, I don't think they really, appreciate the process that we're going through here, and the responsibilities of the legal team not to be divulging our case, or your case, Michael, if in fact you had a case going. Next question. I think that it's on the same thing in terms of the. I think we answered Cameron's question relative to his concerns about potentially having mass transit be on bus transportation, Fall River to Providence and Fall River being incorporated in the overall bridge design. So, I mean, we'll certainly open that up to discussion and see whether that in the end makes sense in the overall project. All right, so this is a good question too, because this has come up, and I think that we are out. And the second, let's see. I guess I don't see his first question, but Jay is, why are we paying to have 3 records sitting on the westbound side when we don't have tow trucks or records at all construction sites around the state? Seems to be a large amount of money wasted for the taxpayers. So Jay, I'm the one who said that I wanted initially the 24 hours coverage there, and we are going out for bid now, and we're evaluating that going forward. So over the next long time frames that we're being as efficient as we can relative to records. But I can tell you that the accidents are down, and we're removing cars that have either been that for some reason were in an accident or were couldn't operate any longer as they're going over the bridge. We're kind of hitting those on record speed because we know how serious that is to people trying to get their kids to school, or trying to get to work, or trying to get home to have their dinner. So, but we're out to bid on that, Peter. I don't know where we are in the procurement of that. Maybe you could just fill in an update on what's the strategy on the records.
final bid. So we're issuing the final bid documents soon. We're finishing those up. But let me just say this about the tow trucks. It's been a very effective strategy. You know, 5 or 6 minutes saved during an accident and getting it cleared from the site is literally thousands of vehicles. And the minutes that are saved on thousands of vehicles end up being hours and days of time. Every time there's an accident, we're saving literally people days of time by getting them cleared quickly. And these wreckers have been very effective by being out there and being able to get to the accident, getting that accident cleared off the road and getting the road open back to traffic. And while people are already having to endure, you know, some waiting times that are inconvenient to them, adding to that every time there's a traffic, an hour delay or a 2-hour delay is, I think you made the appropriate decision, and it's working because we're clearing these accidents very quickly and getting them off the road faster than we ever have before. We don't do this in other work zones because this is a very unique situation where we've got 6 lanes of traffic.
We have a hand up at this point in time. Rep. Catroci said that he, oh, excuse me. I thought I was on mute, Peter.
I'm all set. I'm just saying it's a very effective strategy, though.
We can try Rep. Quadrusi again if you'd like.
Okay, I think that we have 3 more posts, it looks like, and then we have, do we have anybody that's on, that's calling in? Because I have somebody who has said that they were on mute, and they wanted to get back on. They didn't figure out why they were on mute. So if he's still on the call.
Yep, the rep's still there.
All right, then if he's there, let's bring him on.
Hello.
Representative Quattrochi, you are live.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Governor and Director. Couple questions. Director, you stated that some of the world's best bridge builders have said that rebuilding the bridge on the old pier footings is not a good idea, which I tend to agree with 30 years in the concrete industry myself, not building bridges, but still concrete, dealing with concrete, slumps, rebar, and so forth. So my question is, why in the world have we rebuilt bridge decks all over the state on crumbling footings that merely have stucco placed over rotting rebar, and it's already showing through?
Yeah. So we have not, Representative, we have not built new bridges on footings that were rotting to the point where they were incapable of withstanding the pressures for the duration of the life of the infrastructure that's above it. We have done repairs to structures that have had rotting concrete, and we have patched them, which is a standard practice throughout the United States in keeping concrete cover over reinforcing. As you know, if you're in the business, the 2 inches of cover or so over reinforcing rods that are inside reinforced concrete doesn't provide any structural support. It's merely there to protect the concrete from the elements, so that in the event that the steel reinforcing becomes uncovered, then recovering it is a proper thing to do in order to preserve it longer and to make the bridge last longer. That is a standard preservation technique, and where you see that happening, it is merely being done as a preservation. We are not building new structures on inadequate footings or piers.
Thanks, Rep. Appreciate it. And I also would just add, you know, a little, which has come out, and we are continually improving the infrastructure in the state. You know, we're here to talk, you know, primarily about the tear down, but since you brought it up, you know, we've moved up 12 spots since I've been governor on the infrastructure. We're going to keep on doing the work, and we appreciate the General Assembly's support.
One more question. Yeah, one more question, please.
Okay, go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, so, are there any discussions, of tolling to pay for this bridge failure?
No,
Okay. Excellent.
yep.
Okay, that's
And-
it. Simple and easy.
Okay, thanks, Rep.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, we still got a good question here. We'll go right to the end. I think we got 2 or 3 here left. Are there any additional regulatory approvals that are going to hold us up, especially now that we're doing a complete rebuild? So maybe you can just give an answer to that as quickly as you can, Director?
Yes, our project managers and our project consultants have all been engaging with the various regulatory agencies that have anything to do with the demolition and the reconstruction, including agencies like the CRNC, Rhode Island DEM, the federal EPA, the Fish and Wildlife, the Federal Fish and Wildlife Authorities, the Coast Guard, and other agencies. We're in close contact with all of them, coordinating the process so they know exactly what our schedule is and what permits are coming up. They are providing guidance to us in advance of us submitting our applications, and so far, they have all been cooperating in issuing the various permits that we need on a very timely basis for this project. They understand as well as you do and I do the importance of this project, and they're all working very cooperatively with us as partners in order to get us the right information for us to properly apply and meet their regulations. And we're really pleased with that process for this project. And as we move into the design phase for the new bridge, we've already been in touch with those agencies also, and already started working with them to pave the way to getting the necessary approvals on a timely basis.
Okay, thanks, Director. Anonymous says that they're happy that we're doing this call, so thank you, Anonymous. I got only 2 left here. So I think I'll try for this one, but you can weigh in, Director, if you like. Have you thought of banning the companies for future contract with the state who are involved in inspecting the current bridge? Right now the bidding process is open to anyone. I think that the director really spoke to the issue that in the construction industry that this is not abnormal process, and until we kind of really zero in on where the where the liability stands, we are. This is an open process and then we'll evaluate the companies. You got anything more you want to say on that, Director?
No, we have broadened our reach to areas outside of Rhode Island, to companies that are outside of the geographic area, and we've had good reception. So let's see what the procurement process brings forward in the way of competition. We're excited about it.
I think we're at the end. I got a couple of people just saying that they enjoyed the work here. I do have for the Gavi question. I did get that here. It's a $334 million that was approved by the General Assembly. We've drawn down 140 million. As I said, it was in the threes. It was 3.595 interest rate on the 140 million that we borrowed, and it's a 15-year deferred with interest only first 7 years. So if the 12 is still on there. That asked that question. There's the detail for that, and thanks for the question. So we're wrapping it up. I know there's still a handful of people on the call. I want to thank the councilman for his work and his outreach. I called you immediately on Saturday morning, and we were able to put this together in a good period of time. Councilman, I don't know if you want to say anything to wrap it up, and then I'll have the last say.
Thank you, Mr. Governor. I just want to say, look at the chat tonight. You've got so many folks who are saying, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Governor. Thank you. Great job, Governor and team, Governor. Thank you for leadership on this. I mean, you can see it in the chat. So on behalf of my constituents, I want to thank you and Director Alviti and the DOT staff who stayed really light tonight, over 2.5 hours to address all the questions and concerns of our community. We want to thank you all for making this a productive meeting tonight, and thank you again for your leadership.
Hey, Councilman, we got a little field work to do over the next 48 hours or so, but we'll connect tomorrow and figure it out, all right? And I'll also shout out to the director and his team. I can see him in front of me. Thank you very much for doing this. The only message that I'll deliver is that we're gonna work as hard as we can and diligently as we can to get this bridge built as in the safest way possible and in a way that is professional as possible. And we know that there's things that are certainly it's not a straight line, Councilman. None of these projects are, especially when it's a project that there's no playbook on this to a certain degree, and we have to continue to adjust ourselves, and we are. And I can just promise people that we understand that this is a situation that has been a very difficult one for many people in the state of Rhode Island, and certainly everyone in the state of Rhode Island who hears this. I like the idea of maybe finding a way to take some of the concrete and sell them as paperweights for the food bank. I think that was a good idea. And but again, we know that it's been difficult for people getting, in terms of the uncertainty here. We're trying to close that uncertainty as quickly as we can in a way that we can be as definite as we can, as divisive as we can in terms of as definitive as we can in terms of the process. So thanks everybody on here, and we're going to continue to try to alleviate as much of the pain as possible, Councilman, in your area, and also broadly throughout the state where there's business issues. So like I said, repeated over and over again. Families want to know they can be certain to get the kids on school on time, get the work on time, and get home to have dinner with their family on time. So we're doing everything we can to do that. All right, so thank you, Director, and thank you for the team there, and we'll keep on working to communicate as best we can.
Thank you, Don.
Call it a night.